Welcome, I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we're going to be talking about Sand Devil again, and this is probably going to be my last video on this subject for a while. I'm a little burnt out on it. Also, I know many of you get frustrated with it, but I think this might be, helpful as far as like, trying to climb and trying to grow on this dungeon, right? It's yet another part of the game that we want to farm, at least some of the time, and so being able to do it is good. So I'm trying to continue to put out some stuff that I think is helpful for people. And it seems like, some of you at least are getting some knowledge out of what I'm throwing out there, which is great. I'm also getting knowledge back from you guys, because what I wanted to show you today is actually a champion that I think you can probably climb all the way up to about stage 15 or so with this one champion. And it's a rare champion, and it's Apothecary solo. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be somebody you're going to want to farm with. I'm saying that it's possible to beat many of these dungeon levels with this champion. In fact, I was able to beat stage 7, stage 11, and stage 15 with this champion. They're not fast runs, so I would not advise it. He doesn't do hardly any damage, but he is able to get through these runs. And I've showcased some other champions that can solo this boss. And I'll be honest, I'm recording this before I actually release that other video, but I guarantee in the comments it's like, well, all these legendary champions are void epics. Well, you can do it with a rare champion, and I mentioned it at the end of that video, but I'm sure many people just didn't bother to listen to that part of it. The point is, a viewer in one of my other videos had commented, hey, I was able to actually beat it with Apothecary. Total accident, but it happened, and it made me realize, oh yeah, he's an ideal champion to do this sort of thing with. He heals himself, he gives himself a speed boost. That means he's taking his turns over and over again, and he has a triple hit A1, which allows you to use things like Giant Slayer to get some damage across the boss. Now, it's not fast, he doesn't do a lot of damage, but he's able to do it. And because of that, I'm able to beat all of these stages, even if it is slow. And obviously, affinity is going to have a major impact on this. So, when you get crit by that big hit of the boss, it is a problem. So obviously dealing with that is its own kind of special problem. But the idea is, though, that you can take a rare champion with some decent gear and still be able to climb this dungeon. Now, you're going to look at the stats that I have. They're not crazy. They're not low, right? You definitely need quality gear to make this work, but they're not crazy stats. So kind of keep all that in mind as we go through this. And, maybe this is something that you guys would want to do. Maybe it'll just help you to advance until you can build a proper farming team, or maybe it'll give you some more ideas about other champions that you might be able to bring into this dungeon to get this work done. It's kind of the whole point of this. So with that said, let's look at the champion, how I built him, and we'll show you a little bit of one of the runs here, and I'll definitely show you the results I got out of all of them. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one that comes out. And of course, if you enjoyed today's music, we have that link down below in the pinned comment and description of this video, and you can use code DeadwoodJedi, save yourself 15%. And of course, if you want some account work, you don't like doing the work yourself, I'm more than happy to do it for you. My team is at the beck and call. Just visit my website, deadwoodjedi.com. All right, like I said, this is my Apothecary. Now, I want to point out, I have full sets on, right? He's completely decked out, to be fair. When I first beat stage 7 and when I beat stage 11, I didn't have a banner on and I didn't have an amulet on. I didn't need it with the stats that he had. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're going through this. And as you're watching the runs, you'll see how much do I need to survive, HP or defense versus not. And you can make your adjustments that way. When I originally had him built, he was in like a resistance kind of gear set, and I had to swap that out because it just wasn't tanky enough. And then I was like, okay, you know what I should probably do is put Stalwart on him, because that's what's going to keep him alive, and that seemed to do the trick. So there's a couple little things, right? So like I said, I have him in Stalwart gear, and I think that's really, really helpful. I think there's been, Clan Boss Stalwart is great, but I think obviously Sand Devil is way more valuable for than any other gear set, except maybe Defiant, which is basically Stalwart, the same kind of thing, right? So if you can get Defiant sets, if you can get Stalwart sets on your champions and you need them to survive, it's going to do a really good job of helping you do that. So I 100% highly recommend put your champions in Defiant, put them in Stalwart set. It's going to go wonders for keeping them alive, especially your champions like Apothecary that can heal themselves, right? And that's kind of the key to making somebody like him work, is he can heal himself. If you don't have self-healing, then you need to find a way to do that in your gear sets. We're talking lifesteal, we're talking regen. Immortal's probably not going to be up to the task to do it by itself, but it probably won't hurt, right? Putting that on. Even bolster might be okay, though it also probably won't rise to the level that you needed to fully heal your champion. So keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're building these champions, and that's going to be really important. Making sure that they survive. If they're not doing it naturally, build more HP and defense. If they're still not doing it, try using a stalwart set or a defiant set to help bolster their defense from these AoE hits that we're taking. Now, as far as like his gear set, I mean, how I have him, look at it. I mean, I have him right now. He's got 47,000 HP. Like I said, he didn't have the amulet and he didn't have the banner when I did it myself. He had under 40,000 HP. He had under 3,000 defense. I think like 2,900 defense or something like that. This was on stage 7 and stage 11. So you don't need crazy amounts of gear to be able to do this, right? You just have to maintain pace with the healing and have enough HP and defense to not die from the hits of the boss. Now, I should also mention I did that on stage 7 and stage 11. Those are green affinity stages, which means Apothecary cannot be crit. That's kind of crucial. And one of the harder things about this is when that big wipe skill comes through and you take a crit, it's really hard, almost impossible to survive it. So because of that, you definitely want to make sure that you have, you know, if you're going against a stage that's not good affinity, make sure you're going to want to build that HP, that defense up even more than I have here. Now, you know, as far as like the sets, like I got crit rate gloves on him to make sure he gets 100% crit, 5-star defense chest, speed boots. There's nothing super wild going on here with his kits. You know, all the bottom stuff was all HP or defense. The big thing here, the thing I try to do is build his speed up, and I didn't even go super crazy, right? He's 233 speed. From my account, I can easily build that way faster, you know, and so that's something that you probably want to look at doing, actually, if you can. But the great thing about him is he's kind of a solo kit, so you could actually speed farm him and bring in like 4 pieces of food, and with some masteries get him a little bit extra speed that way. That's always a possibility as well. Now, as far as his masteries do go, I went down the offensive tree here, right, trying to get more crit rate, crit damage, and down to Giant Slayer. That's going to be important for getting extra damage. And then support tree just to up his healing. And like I said, Spirit Haste is a great way to improve your speed. Like it adds 24 speed basically. So that's always a good choice there, I would say. So we could run him here. I'm going to just take it on stage 7. It's real short, right? It's not a super fast stage. In fact, I'm going to bring in 4 pieces of food just so you can get the full effect of what he can do. Now, like I said, I have screenshots of him beating the higher stages. I'll show those after this. So you know for sure that he can beat those higher stages. You don't, you know, you can take my word for it, but I'm going to show you the proof that he can do that. The big thing here is, though, I just want to be able to show you kind of like how he works. So I'm going to make this as fast as I can. I'm going to keep the banner. I'm going to keep the amulet on. Just know I can do it without that stuff. Anyway, let's jump in here. You can see really quickly how it works. All right, so the big thing here is he's going to keep his speed up the full fight, and his heal is on a 2-turn cooldown, which is really, really valuable when we're trying to recover that max HP. But basically, you can see here, right, with that stalwart set on, he's not taking a ton of damage, and he's able to, you know, protect himself. Even with the increased speed is helping to match him, so I don't need resistance on him whatsoever. But when that wipe does come, he's able to heal himself up and erase pretty much all that max HP in one go, which is pretty remarkable, I would say. And, you know, honestly, he might actually be going too fast right now because he's having a harder time healing up than I would like. But yeah, you can see he's just incredibly good as far as that healing goes, and just staying alive. And so he's able to kind of persevere throughout this fight. It's also not very fast. We're a minute in, and you know the boss is maybe 15% killed. Not that great. So that's definitely going to be a little bit trickier. And so that's why this is kind of what I would say is more of a climbing build. Or if you want to farm with food, you know, you can be using him in that kind of stead as well. But you can see the max HP is all gone. He's healed himself up completely at this point. It's a pretty easy thing to do here, right? And this is why I say the solo farming builds for this dungeon aren't crazy. Now, why stage 7? Because it's probably the best place to farm if you just want the lesser oils. If you want the medium oils, stage 11's, will give you some. Stage 16 or 15 will give you some as well, and he can farm stage 15. 16 I tried, I wasn't able to do it, but again, I didn't go to town with his gear, right? I could have replaced the speed boots with HP boots or something like that to help him survive the big wipe hit. If I had done something like that, I think he probably could do that stage actually. But even then, it was taking me, it was going to be like a 15-minute run, I think, even on stage 15. So it's not really worth it to necessarily do that. But you know that this is one of those champions that you can take to help climb this dungeon, right? You just have to beat the stages once to have access to it from there on. So I wouldn't use him to farm or anything like that, but I would use him to get to the next stages that we need done. And that's kind of, part of the thing here, right? It's not just about having a stage you can farm, but also about getting to those stages so you can farm it, because the speeds change so much at every single level that it's hard to like really gear out a team for this necessarily, or it can cost a lot of silver, or, all that stuff. So to avoid some of that, using a champion like Apothecary to climb a fair amount of the dungeons is a pretty good way to go, I would say. And so I would say you could probably take him all the way from 1 to 11, I would say, pretty easily. And then, depending on how well you build him out, you might even be able to take him all the way up to 15 without having to bring in anybody else. Affinity does matter. So like I said, if he's going against red, that's probably not going to be your best place to go. But, you're not relying on any special sets. You're not relying on debuffs. All you're relying on is the Giant Slayer procs off his masteries to deal the damage for you, and for himself to go fast enough and heal himself enough where he can get as many of those hits in as possible and beat down the boss. So yeah, that's it. I mean, it's not super fast, but it is super effective. So there you go. There you go. 6 minutes, 30 seconds. Not the fastest in the world, but it's not crazy fast. I mean, crazy slow, I wouldn't say, especially because you can farm a little food along the way. But yeah, I mean, we're able to do it with just Apothecary, which I think is pretty cool. Just so you can see, I've also done that in actually a faster time when I had less gear on him. One of the things is when he actually, because I have so much gear on him right now and so much more defense, he's not taking as much damage, which means his heal actually isn't removing as much max HP as it possibly could. So there is a balance there to how much damage you actually want to take, right? But the idea is that, I was able to do this in, 5 minutes and 46 seconds. So definitely a little faster than this, but it's going to be about that kind of speed. RNG is definitely going to be a bit of a factor. But I did promise the other stages, right? So here you go. You can see stage 11 where I did it in under 10 minutes. And stage 15, I believe it is. There it is. Stage 15 in under 16 minutes. So you can see, it's not fast, but it's definitely doable, and I think that's pretty cool. There is going to be some balance there, right? Making sure you have enough defense so you're not getting wiped, making sure you have enough HP so that, when the hit that comes in ignores defense, you're not getting wiped. Those things are all going to really matter a lot. And then, of course, having Apothecary specifically with 100% crit rate means that he's going to heal himself up fully with that, right? And that's going to be really important as well. Now, if you're trying to do this with somebody else, it is going to be tricky. I don't have great suggestions for you guys. That's just the reality of it. I really wish I did, but it's very hard to say that, find a champion that can go fast enough, heal up enough, and do damage for you to make this kind of thing worth it. But here's the thing. I've labeled out several champions with both in this video and another video I did, several champions that can solo this boss. You have access to all the champions. You have access to all their skills. You now know what to look for, right? You need self-healing, some kind of healing. You need some kind of, ability to deal damage and something to, protect yourself, whether that just means building them fast and trying to get extra turns in where you can, or whether that means giving yourself increased speed or block debuffs or cleansing, whatever it is. You need to find something to help them stay alive and continue to stay on track in this boss, right? You don't want them going any slower than a 1-1 ratio, and generally you're going to want multiple attacks when the sleep actually happens after the boss tries to wipe you. That's going to be pretty important. One of the best things I can think of actually is actually just going a little bit slower than the boss. It'll give you the opportunity to go immediately after he goes and enjoy the 2-turn sleep count that he has after his wipe ability and have an extra chance to either land some debuffs or to heal yourself up and erase that max HP. I think that's actually going to be pretty crucial. And one of the nice things about with a solo champion, you're rarely cracking the shield, if at all. And so, or the sleep, I should say, you're rarely cracking that sleep. And so what that means is you basically are able to get 3 turns in between the wipe ability of the boss and his next big hitting ability, his A3 and his A2. Between those skills, the boss is going to be sleeping for 1-2 turns, and then you'll get another turn before he actually attacks again. So you get 3 attacks in there, essentially 3 turns, and gives you some more time for some healing and to recover and continue your run going. So this is, I think, probably the easiest approach to climbing the Dune to climbing the Sand Devil Necropolis, is getting a solo champion that will, can survive it all and just letting them do the work for you. So as far as rares, I think Apothecary might be the cream of the crop for this. But I don't want to say that there aren't others. I'm sure there are that can probably do this if you gear them out right. But the gear is going to be the main thing, and this is the hardest content in the game at the moment, which means that is going to be the capstone. That's going to be the thing that's going to limit you. So even if you can do this, if a lot of you are probably like, I can't get to stage 11 or 16. It's not going to be easy. There's no cheat skill necessarily to get through that stuff. Either you have to have a bunch of unkillable champions, to do it one way, or you need the gear to really get through it. And there's no other way to go about it, right? So just be aware of that and don't get frustrated. Gear's always improving. You're always going to keep farming. So eventually you'll be able to get there, even if you don't necessarily have all the champions for it at the moment. Eventually you'll get those too. So anyway, guys, I hope this was, helpful, enlightening, whatever, or answered some questions at least of how can I do this? This is yet another way, yet another option as far as approaches go to doing this. And, I had Stalwart on him. I don't think that's the only set that you could do this with. I'm sure you could use regen and be just as successful. I'm sure you could just use regular gear and be just as successful as well. It really does come down to the stats primarily. And so, things like Stalwart are definitely helpful and allow you to get by with lesser stats. But I don't know that it's necessary. I think you could probably do it right if you have the gear for it. So that's all we got for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And that's it. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for sticking around. Take the time to subscribe if you haven't. I definitely appreciate it. And I definitely appreciate you for sticking around. So till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.